All right, we are live. Give me one moment here. Oh, yeah. Okay. Hello, welcome. I'm Lita Mae Button, and welcome to Dildo Dilemma: Humor in the Face of Trauma weekly podcast. I want you to imagine being paralyzed by fear because each step you've taken forwards up to this point in life was blocked with the obstacles that live inside: doubt, insecurities, and feelings of abandonment. That was me from the age of 16 to 22. Then, bam, life sucker punched me. I became a single parent to my son with a lifelong and at times life-threatening blood disorder called hemophilia B. I knew that I needed to deal with those obstacles to be strong and help him grow into a productive and well-adjusted adult. So I began boxing competitively, and through one punch, one competition, and overcoming one fear at a time, I did it. I learned how to punch back at life, absorbing the shock of life's blows and channeling those blows into empowering myself and tackling those fears in the ring, which rippled out into my everyday life, giving me the confidence to live life on my own terms and be the number one role model for my son, and also protect us if the need should arise. And it's why I'm a motivational speaker and coach and do what I do, because I know the end result when you are empowered on every level of your being, especially being a woman, because when a woman takes back and steps into her power from the inside out, it has a rippling effect that the world needs to heal. And it's also very stimulating for the economy. When a woman empowers herself, first and foremost, she shows and nurtures onto and into others what is possible. And it teaches us how to treat each other with love, kindness, and compassion. And the world needs that more than ever, especially when it comes to ending violence against women. So if you're joining and watching this today, that is why I'm doing the weekly podcast and movement called Dildo Dilemma: Humor in the Face of Trauma. It's about bringing humor, boxing, storytelling for awareness, advocacy, and action to help eliminate violence against women in Newfoundland and worldwide. So, in case you're wondering why Newfoundland, well, two reasons. It's my home and it's my family's home. And I recently found out that violence against women statistic in Newfoundland is higher than the rest of Canada, with 1 in 2 women over the age of 15 experiencing a form of stalking or violence in their lifetime. And I want to make lasting changes for my family now and my grandkids that will be born in the future. And to make changes, I know that first and foremost, we have to focus on what is happening inside and closest to us. And then the second reason, Newfoundland is just plain awesome. It's Canada's most eastern province that is an island to just over 500,000 people with its own time zone. And the name of towns like Blow Me Down and Dildo. However, an imposter in 2019 by the name of Jimmy Kimmel has claimed himself as mayor of our town of Dildo, yet not has once visited Dildo or even stepped foot into our home island of Newfoundland. And now I just recently found out some other dude by the name of Jerry D, who's also not a Newfoundlander, is trying to take a run for the mayorship of Dildo. It is time to put a woman in charge to advocate for Newfoundland. And it's a real dildo dilemma. So make sure, hashtag Lita Mae Button, hashtag Mayor of Dildo, hashtag Nurturing Leadership, hashtag Dildo Dilemma, hashtag Time for Change. So today's guest is here joining us, thankfully, to give us a little bit of insight and story. So I am going to ask my guest, why did you decide to say yes to being a guest on the podcast, Dildo Dilemma: Humor in the Face of Trauma?
Well, I said yes because I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I want other women to know that they can survive too. I want them to know that they can leave, they can take back their control, They are stronger and smarter and braver than they believe they are. I want them to know that life gets better, like so much better when you're free. No matter what you might go through to get to that point, um, life is better. It doesn't matter what hurdle comes at you after you leave, it's still better. Just so much better than you could ever imagine. And I also just want people who don't uh, fully understand domestic violence and what it means for a woman to leave. I want them to get an understanding of how difficult it is to leave and to say what's been happening.
So when you say you want them to get an understanding of how difficult it is to leave, would you be comfortable in sharing the steps that you led up to getting to that point to leave your partner before?
Well, I actually left him, and this is quite common, and I know now. I left him 3 times before I left him the fourth time for good. Because they have this, at least most do, uh, an amazing ability to suck you back in
Hmm.
and make you believe that it's going to be different. So it took 4 tries. The fourth one worked. I was one of the luckier ones, believe it or not. I had family I could turn to. I had parents that took me and my 3 children in. So I knew that they would be there for me and be able to help me. And that's how I got out of there. I also I had an opportunity come up for me to go back to school. And even though my ex-partner didn't want me to do it, um, I'm sure for a lot of nefarious reasons, I did it anyways. And that is what it took me 2 years, but that is how I left. I played the long game. I got my education and post-secondary and knew that when I left, I would be able to care for myself and my 3 kids on my own, financially, because that is one of the things that he
Hmm.
made me believe was that I would not be able to support myself or the kids without him. So it was a long process for me to actually walk out that door and never go back.
Um, Thank you for sharing that. Was there like you said that you'd left like 3 times before. Was there a specific turning point and a moment that you realized that enough was enough?
Uh, like that fourth time, you mean? Like when I actually decided I was done?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was actually, he was pretty good at keeping the violence away from the children's faces. Like they didn't usually see it. They would probably hear it, but they didn't usually see him hurt me. But this one particular day, he lost complete control, and my 2 older children witnessed it, and my youngest, who was 2.5 at the time, was in my arms while he was hurting me and screaming and crying, and my other 2 children were screaming and crying. And I was, I realized the escalation that now it wasn't just behind closed doors or when the kids were in bed, or it was now in front of them. And that scared me so bad that I literally took children out of that house. That as soon as He was done. My youngest didn't even have shoes on his feet. And I loaded them up into the car and I left while he was downstairs. It all happened very fast.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Was there kind of a plan that you had before this happened?
Well,
Was
at this point, I had graduated my program
okay.
and I had a job. And
Yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons for the escalation was because I had a job.
Yeah.
Um, and he didn't like that.
No.
And, so
Yeah.
things didn't change even after I got done school. Um, I was able to bring in an income, et cetera, that none of that made a difference. And he got worse. So that's when I was just like, okay, we can't do this anymore. If he's willing to do this to me in front of the children, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah. And uh it is about the power and control. And so it sounds like things were escalating because he was feeling like he was losing a sense of power and control.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And uh, did you ever, I want to talk about like female intuition. Did you ever have moments before things started to escalate where you kind of, I call them red flags that were coming up for you?
Oh my goodness. If only, if only I had listened because, in the beginning of our relationship, of course, you know, it's love bombing. It's wonderful. He's great. He was, I was a single parent when I met him. I already had a child
Yeah.
and, he was like, oh, I can't believe you're a mom. You're such a good mom, et cetera, et cetera. So like, he made me feel like he was wonderful. But, um, we got serious really fast.
Hmm.
That was a red flag. He got serious really fast. And then, I ended up pregnant with my daughter and we had an argument one evening and he pushed me and I fell down and
This is while you were
like it was
pregnant.
just an accident.
Yeah.
It was an accident. I'm using quotation marks here.
Yeah.
Um, and that should have been a tip off that like this is not cool. Yeah, I was 4 months pregnant, 4 months pregnant. And I married him anyways. A month later, we got married. The day of my wedding, I'm in the bridal room and I am screaming at myself, basically. So seriously, I'm like, you should run. You should run. You should not do this. You should not do this. And I was like, oh, this is cold feet. Everybody says you get cold feet. And I convinced myself that it was just cold feet and not something much, much more serious as, it should have been. Like, it should have been a clue that he would do that to me when I was pregnant. Anyways, so yeah, things did not go well from there.
Thank you for sharing that. You were very brave and courageous to be sharing your story and the insights that you have by what you've gone through is extremely courageous.
Thank you.
So when you were going through any of that time besides going to school, were there any kind of other supports or systems that you reached out to?
Well, they're not personally. So, um, when my oldest child started school, he actually, unbeknownst to me, I did not know, he had witnessed an incident between myself and my ex, and he actually told a teacher about it, and it
Okay.
was a pretty serious incident, and so that got reported, of course. I mean, that's their job, and um, I had social workers interview my children and interview me. Um, and at that point, I was in deny, 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 deny. Um, and that happened actually a few times, where the children were interviewed over an incident that was said, like that they had said happened. Um, and so I had social workers come to the house. Um, there was never, not until much later, before there was police involvement, but at the beginning, it was just, social workers, child protective services, and whatnot, interviewing me, interviewing the children. Um, but nothing ever came of it. Like I was never uh, told that I had to leave him. I was never given an option to leave him. I was never, because I denied it, but they didn't even, from there, they didn't even, you know, say, well, just in case
Yeah.
this is what's happening. None of that. Not, I was never given any um education, any pamphlets, nothing about abuse and domestic violence and none of that. It was just, okay, everybody is here and they're in one piece. Okay, we're gone. Bye. That was it.
Really?
Yeah.
That is kind of shocking.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So, do you feel if the situation, if that you had given a little bit more of support in terms of giving you like an idea of how a way out,
Mm-hmm.
that it may have helped you see the light sooner?
Yes, I do, because that's eventually what happened, but it happened on my own. Like once I started school, I started learning a lot of things and realizing a lot of things. I gained some independence and that helped me see a lot of things differently. So I think that if I had been given some more guidance, not without judgment,
Yeah.
because I didn't feel supported at all. I felt like I was being judged. I felt like they didn't see me as a valuable human. Uh, they don't, or at least in my experience, I didn't get, anyone to say to me, like, listen, uh, I know that you're not going to say anything or that you don't feel like you can say anything, but I want you to know that these are the things that you can do.
Yeah.
These are the options that you do have. And if you need a safe way to tell me what's happening, we can find a way, right? Because
Yeah.
I was petrified that he would find out that I had said anything. And if he found out that I had said anything before I was out of that house, I don't know if I would have left that house alive.
Yeah.
That's how petrified I was about saying anything. Because I was like, and then if I'm not there, he's left with my children. So, you feel like if I'm there, I can protect them.
Yeah.
And this is what you're thinking to your own self. I don't know. It's messed up because they beat you down so bad, your abuser.
Yeah.
He he beat me down so bad that I did not think that I had a brain cell in my own head. I really didn't. I
So
just needed someone to say to me that, you know,
that you're not, and what you're thinking and what you're feeling is not just in your head, it's actually really happening, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that you are not. He made me feel like I couldn't do anything without him. So if someone had just, been an actual ally instead of somebody I felt like was just trying to Do tick off some boxes on their chart, like on their piece of paper, you know,
Yeah.
check, check, check. Everything here is fine. I never ever felt like I was a priority or that they were actually really going to listen and help.
So, when you were going through the courts for divorce, how did you handle that? And like, because next week I'm interviewing a lawyer who advocates and represents women and people
Oh,
who've been
well,
domestic violence.
I wish that had been my case. Um, I I at first had legal aid, and my legal aid lawyer, I mean, this is the part that is very, very frustrating for me. This is where my frustrations really start to come out because I barely got to see my legal aid lawyer. You get like 10 minutes in the closed room before court happens to talk to them. Uh, I never felt like my legal aid lawyer had any kind of understanding or knowledge of domestic violence and what to do in those situations. Um, I had to be in the courtroom with my abuser, which I don't think should ever be the case. It's extremely hard to explain. For one, you're ashamed
Yeah.
and you don't want to say it out loud. Two, to have to say it out loud while he's staring at you, like, come on, it shouldn't happen. And repeatedly, I had to get up in front of him and be questioned by my lawyer, his lawyer, while he's sitting there staring at me. And I'm telling you, it was horrifying. It was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life because the anxiety, fear,
Yeah.
like it is real fear.
Yeah.
It is shaking your boots fear. So it comes down to, nobody understanding that I'm a victim and the things I had to face in the courtroom, even though I was a victim. My lawyer not having any idea of what I was dealing with. Um, there was no connections between um, police who were eventually involved, the social workers who had been involved. Uh, none of that was connected or brought up in court. Um, I had to eventually get a pay for a lawyer because, all of a sudden I'm making too much money as a single mom with three kids
Yeah.
um, to get legal aid. And even still, now the lawyer I had to pay for was better, but still and all, because there's none of these connections made, or because I don't have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars behind me, the things that were reported and were never brought into court. So that didn't help my situation. And over the years, like he literally would call and report me to Child Protective Services for things like parental alienation and whatnot. Um, and I don't know, other
So
BS things like,
this was your ex-husband.
yeah, yeah, my ex-husband was reporting me to Child Protective Services
Yes.
for things like I said, not for abuse, but because like parental alienation, which is a crack.
A,
And
a form of
the
emotional
children were,
abuse.
uh-huh, the children were interviewed multiple times at school without me present because of his report, um, which was very traumatizing for them. And he brought me back to court. I don't up until okay, I left him in 2012. Um, no, that's when I got my sorry, that's when I got my official divorce. But after that, after 2012, when I got my official divorce, he was still bringing me back to court up until 5 years ago, just for anything he could think of, and using legal aid to do it. He had legal aid the entire time,
Okay.
while I had to pay every time he brought me back to court. I had to pay a lawyer.
And what did your
Oh,
lawyer tell you when this was happening? Like you knew that these were uh charges and claims that were not substantial, but was your lawyer empathetic or sympathetic in terms of helping you be proactive for this to prevent this from happening again?
absolutely not. No, no, my lawyer just showed up the day of court, and yeah, we would speak beforehand,
Mhm.
but there was no way to stop him. If he called and and reported me for whatever reason he could come up with, they, social services are required to investigate it. Even though I did get one of the social workers to say to me, not on record, of course, that she knew what he was doing, that he was using the system to further try to assert control over me. But there was nothing they could do because every time he called, they had to report it. They had to investigate it because that's their job. That's their law.
Wow.
So even though they knew he was calling and making false reports,
Yeah.
they had to investigate
And
and put my kids through all of that.
yeah, because they know it's a false report. And then after they find out it's a false report, do they charge him?
No, they just closed the file
Wow.
because they can't really prove that it
Yeah,
was a false report. They
right.
investigate, they don't find anything to support it, but they can't prove that he didn't think that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
So many flaws in the system, so many.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective and experience with the system. Do you think that there is a better way to do it? Like if you were in that situation again, or if you were to say to another woman who's going through that situation, what advice would you give her?
I wish I had some. I really do. Because well, it's been a long time now since then. Well, only 5 years, but um, I don't know if there's been any changes in the way things work now. I mean, I know that changes need to happen. Like there, and I can't say what because everything is so disjointed. Like there is no connections in the court system between social workers and family justice. There just doesn't seem to be any connections there. Like no one knows what the other one's doing, right?
Yeah.
So he's falsifying reports and reporting me over and over and over again. But is that a criminal problem? Can the police get be involved there? I don't know. Is that a court problem? I don't know. So basically, and so he gets to use these systems because there's nobody to stop him. So I wish I had advice. The only advice I can give is surround yourself by people who believe you and support you and who are going to stand beside you while you deal with the legal system because it's a mess.
Yeah.
But even still, even though I went through all of that, I would do it again tomorrow because my life has been beautiful since I left.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, on that note, I'm going to give a little bit of a educational humor break now about the town of Dildo and the adult toy dildo. The town of Dildo, Newfoundland was originally founded in the late 18th century, around 1788, and was settled to exploit the abundance of marine resources because Newfoundland is mostly known for its cod fishery as well as its whales and seals. So that is why Dildo was originally founded. And the actual adult word of dildo in terms of early evidence was an example of a dildo-like object that dates back to the Stone Age. Archaeologists found ancient artifacts in sites such as Germany and China as far back as 30,000 years ago. And these objects were often carved from stone or animal bone and were thought to be used for both ritualistic and sexual purposes. So, in case you didn't know that information. Um, so when we were talking before, you mentioned that life is really beautiful right now, which is absolutely awesome. I'm so happy for you that you're at this point. But you did talk about that you put the work in.
Hmm.
So would you be able to expand a little bit more on what kind of work you did for yourself to help and how you think that this work can help other women that have gone through or are going through a similar situation?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like I said, the first thing I did was making that plan and I went and got an education. But beyond getting an education, because it doesn't have to be going to school uh, for an education, it can be educating yourself on abuse, because that is another thing that I did. I devoured any any information I could get my hands on about abuse and trauma and what that does to you. And like it helped me understand what he had done to me, not just physically, but mentally, like how he had beat me down and how none of that was actually true. It was how abusers actually pick their victims and pick their partners. And they might not do it consciously, but it's what draws an abuser to the person they abuse. And learning all of these things as I was going through all these court things, and it just helped me empower myself. No one else was empowering me. I just knew I had to do it for me, do it for my kids. So I was teaching myself about what had happened to me and how it had happened to me, how I became this person. It was really hard for me to understand how I went from being the woman that I had been before I met him to
Yeah.
being the woman I was when I was married to him. These two people didn't match. And so I learned all about, I taught it to myself. I read everything that I could. So educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself, learn, read about it, because that is how you start to understand that it's not you.
Yeah.
People could have told me till I was blue in the face that he wasn't what I said I was. I couldn't have believed it from them, from my mom, from my sisters. I had to learn it for myself and read it on that page and really resonate with everything that they were saying. It's like, yes, he did that. Yes, he did that. For me to know that it was him, not me.
Yeah.
And
So
that is one of the ways,
being to
besides,
put all the pieces together.
making a plan to leave. Yeah, I started to piece it all together for myself. And then I spent, you know, a lot of time surrounded by those people who I had, or who he had isolated me from.
Yeah.
So my parents and my sisters, I have two sisters,
Mhm.
and he had isolated me from them, even though we had been really, really close. So once I got out of that, I surrounded myself and rebuilt those relationships and had their support 100%. So educate yourself, surround yourself by people who will support you and stand behind you through thick and thin. And that is, for a lot of us, our families, but it could be anybody. And and then the other thing I did was I gave myself time. I gave myself time to heal, you know? I
Yeah.
spent years, I spent years dating. Like, it's not like I lived like a monk. I dated and everything after my marriage, and I seen people here and there, but I never ever would dive into a serious relationship, not for years.
Yeah.
And I did not involve my children with people I might have been dating. Even if we dated for months, I was like, nope, this is an outside relationship. The kids are not being involved in this.
Mhm.
And that is what I did for years until I was sure I was ready, until I had done a lot of, like I said, healing and learning.
Good for you. Uh, so one thing that I've learned, and I've experienced this myself, and is that it's slow erosion in these,
Mm.
right? And it's, I don't know if the term is gaslighting, but when you're trying to call a person out on something and they make you think it's all in your head,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
And it's the
Yeah.
emotional 95% of emotionally abusive relationships turn into physical violence,
Hmm.
right? Uh, so this is important for anyone who's watching this now or in the future to understand that, and that's why I said the red flags. And when you shared your experience in terms of being in court, I just met a court journalist reporter who I think is retired now. I met him last week, and when I did my actual talk, Dildo Dilemma, Humor in the Face of Trauma, to the Positive Thinkers Club in St. John's, and he said he's your story that you shared about being re-traumatized in the fear in court. Every woman goes through
Hmm.
it, and he goes, I don't
Yeah.
understand why they do that to the women, because you don't do it to
Hmm.
children. Children are interviewed in another place with a camera where there's safe space,
Yeah.
video live to court. Why is it, you know, they do it to women? So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a really important piece. Um,
Yes. Me too. Yeah.
yeah. So is there anything else that you would like to share?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think I basically have touched base on the key points that I think are where
Yeah.
there is troubles in our system. And I just want other women to know that there's light. You can you can get out and you can survive.
Thank you for sharing that, because that I'm sure for many women who are going through a similar situation or just getting out of it, that is a huge beacon of light and hope.
I don't think I realized myself, truthfully, how many women there were like myself because we don't talk about it.
No, we don't. And that's
And
why I'm doing.
that's an yeah, and
I'm
that's
not
another
laughing. I'm
key
just,
point.
yeah.
No, because it's another key point. It's not talked about. The reason why I'm anonymous is because I come from a small town. His parents are there. He's still there. If he heard this or if they did, they would harass me.
Yeah.
They would probably get family members to harass me. So like you don't and another thing is that I don't want to re-traumatize my children.
Like,
They don't need to hear me talking about this or talking crap about their dad, even though they don't have a relationship with him anymore either. That's not what this is about, right? But that's what they would make it about.
yeah.
But that's why we don't talk up. We don't talk about it. It's because the repercussions of when we do.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be talked about more because I had no idea there were so many women like myself going through this. And I want other women to know that, that we're here. The survivors are here. The ones who have gotten out and gotten away and have moved on and are happy, we're here.
Yeah.
We will listen. We will support you.
Yeah. Thank
I
you
will
so
go
much for
stand in your corner if you don't have anyone else.
yeah.
Like I'm there because no one needs to be alone going through this. And they need to know that people care.
You do. Especially when you're feeling so, I know what that feels like when you're feeling like there is no sense of hope or light. Right. It's very, very
Yeah.
important. Uh, so the one thing that I'm going to add to this in terms of women are listening, and this is one thing I learned through my situation in dealing and taking advice from um, my lawyer when I was going through the full custody, is you want to document everything. Um, because you want to document text messages, you want to document emails, you want to save phone calls, because when it does get to the point of going to court, you built your case. So then it's not just word. That's one thing I've definitely learned over the years to pass on, to build a case. It's very, very important in regards to the legal system. So in parts of what you've shared today, which is absolutely amazing, and thank you again for sharing and your courage for sharing and sharing your story, is that women need to educate themselves about what's going on, what abuse looks like, what trauma does for you, so that you can empower yourself. And if you have children in the situation, that you can help protect your children as well. It's important to make a plan and then do your best to surround yourself with people who will support you. And then give yourself time to heal so that you can uh, have time, know when it's time to move on and be in a healthier place to begin another relationship again. So thank you again so much for sharing your story. So
You're welcome.
gonna wrap up today with a couple of jokes because this is humor in the face of trauma. Dildo dilemma or dildo jokes. So, and feel free to guess what the answer is. I'll pause here. Uh, what's a dildo's favorite type of music? Any guesses?
Uh, None. I no
Okay.
no
Anything with a
idea.
good beat.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
okay. How did the woman feel when her dildo broke?
Devastated.
Yes. Close. Deflated, but she knew it was time to move on.
Oh God.
Okay, last one. This one really made me chuckle. Why was the dildo so calm during a crisis?
Haven't got a clue.
It knew how to stay firm in tough situations. Oh my gosh. Okay. Uh,
Those are funny.
so for those of you that are watching, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel or share with any other women that may need to hear this message as well to give them light and hope. And next week, we will be airing live again earlier in the afternoon around 2 p.m. Newfoundland time. And I'll be interviewing a lawyer by the name of Lynn that works out of Newfoundland to give you a different perspective of the legal system in terms of representation for survivors. So thank you so much again for watching. And I hope everyone has an amazing weekend.